24, and we're going to call the meeting to order. Let's start with the roll call, please.
Rodney Davis, James Bruce,
Here.
Tyler Young, Tony Meacham,
Here.
David Howell.
Here.
Cowan Brooks, Connie McGahee. Here. Mark Graham.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, if we would, let's all stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. Board members should have received minutes of last month's meeting in their packet, and we'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Excuse me, it's been moved and properly seconded. Are there any questions about the motion? All in favor, let it be known by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Are there any reports from staff? All right. We will move into public hearings. But before we do that, we will, I've got some verbiage here that we've got to read. So just bear with me as we cover these bases, and then we'll get into public hearings. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Howell. I'm acting as the chairman of the City of Hopkinsville's Code of Ordinance Enforcement Board. The purpose of this board is to protect, promote, and improve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens residing within the City of Hopkinsville. If a board member perceives a potential conflict with hearing a case, he or she shall recuse themselves from the case and will not discuss their disposition. When your name is called, please come forward, speak loudly and clearly, because we are required to record all proceedings from these hearings. You're here tonight because you received a citation and chose to appear before the board instead of paying the fine imposed on the citation. You have the right to confront and cross-examine any witnesses that might appear here against you. You have the right to call your own witnesses to testify on your behalf and to introduce any physical evidence you feel pertinent to this case. You have the right to an attorney. If you wish to hire one to represent you, please let me know that, and I will request the board to postpone your case to enable you to do so. I have the right as chairman of the board to limit the amount of testimony which is presented. That shall be done when I determine that certain testimony is irrelevant or is repetitive. This is not the same as a court of law, and legal rules of evidence do not have to be followed. This is similar to an administrative hearing, and the requirements for the introduction of evidence are not as stringent as in a court of law, but they are nonetheless just as important to ensure a just decision. You shall be afforded all rights which are of fundamental importance to comply with due process standards of fairness and justice. The burden of establishing the violation occurred rests with the city. If the city cannot prove a violation took place, no fine or remedial measures may be imposed. After all the evidence and testimony have been introduced and the hearing has been closed, the board will make a decision. The board will decide whether or not a violation of a local ordinance has been committed. If the board determines no violation was committed, then this board will enter an order dismissing the citation. If the board determines that a violation did take place, then the board will enter an order upholding the citation and will order you to pay a fine in an amount up to the maximum authorized by ordinance and may order you to remedy the violation within a specified period of time. In cases involving unsafe structures, the board, as a part of its decision and written order, may additionally make a provision for the offender to cure the violation within a period of time not to exceed 90 days pursuant to HCO 33.188F. Except in cases of default, any final order issued by the board may be appealed to the Christian District Court. The appeal must be filed no later than 30 days from the date the board issues its final order. The case in front of the Christian District Court will be limited to a review of the record created before this board. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to ask. All right, at this time, we will begin with as I said, the public hearings, and the first one we have up is case number CECF 2409-001, Charter Communications, and we're going to defer to the board attorney.
The attorneys for both Charter and the city have requested a continuance. They are discussing this matter, so I believe we have that set on December 10th. Is that correct? For at that time, and we will let you know at that time if there's a resolution or if there will be a hearing. And no action is needed.
No action is needed by the board. Thank you, Mr. Whalen. So that one is settled for tonight. We do have two other public hearings, and we're going to take those in order. We'll swear you in, but I want to see if both parties are present, because if they're not, we'll take the one that's present first so that you guys can get out of here. Griffin Scalia Beltran, is that you? Okay, and is there anyone here? Walter Shamble. Walter Shamble is not present. Okay, so we're going to follow the order of the agenda. So the case is CE-GTW 2408-112, and the code enforcement officer is Darnell West. If you would, I'd like Darnell and for Mrs. Scala Beltran to please stand, or anyone that's going to speak, just stand. We'll swear you in, and then we'll hear from the city, and then we'll hear from you guys, okay? If you would, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say, I do. Very good. You guys can have a seat, please. And Darnell, if you would, please step forward and present the case. And before you get started, I do have to ask you to state your full name and employer and position for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Darnell West. I work as a code enforcement officer for Hopkinsville Fire Department.
Okay, and please describe the procedure followed for the citation on our agenda here. This is for 2616 Kenwood Drive.
Yes, sir. All right. Would you like for me to describe the procedures, or would you like for me to go through the presentation?
Why don't you go ahead and go through the presentation?
Yes, sir. All right. So, today I bring you guys case number 2408-112, violation address 2616 Kenwood Drive here in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. This did come as a complaint about the overgrowth and weeds that was on the property and kind of close to the right of way. This is a map of where the property sits on Kenwood. And in that small little red circle is where the violation occurred. And the over here on the right would be the PVA information that tells us where to send all of our notices and things of that nature. So on August the 28th, this is the area in question, and no doubt in my mind, that is above 8 inches or higher and excessive weeds on the property. Some of the Chapter 93 ordinances that kind of back up why I cited the property. In that first paragraph, you can see the passive maintenance of the right-of-way, including mowing, trimming, erosion prevention, and sowing of grass, is the responsibility of the home and or homeowner and or a lot owner by undertaking routine actions normally associated with yard or property upkeep. Go down to the next one. Weeds or long grass is allowed to grow. Stagnant water is allowed to grow or to remain is declared to be a nuisance and dangerous to the health of the people in the city. So, and then down there, we all know 8 inches or less for anything that will be improved property. So We got that. A couple of definitions. I don't think the bottom two really matter with this one, but improved property, for sure, the top definition. This is what would be considered a repeat offender because this property received a notice of violation on July 1st of this year for pretty much the same instance. That case was resolved by others or by the property owner. So that resulted in a abated or case closed. No further action was taken after the second inspection was done. We all know what an NOV is at this point. Since the property was in violation, again, it did go straight to a citation. No questions asked, and we all know that warnings are not mandatory. They are just a courtesy. This is from the previous case. This was June 27th of this year. And it's pretty much the same thing where the grass or the weeds were kind of getting out of hand in that same little area. On October the 9th, we issued a citation. It appeared that no work had been done. That area was still well overgrown. This is a timeline. When I got the complaint, first inspection date, it was posted on October the 15th was my first time speaking with someone in regards to the property. I believe the lady that I spoke to told me that she was the mother of the homeowner. And she explained to me that she thought she took care of what the issue was, that she did do some work around the property, but she wasn't for certain that I was talking about that area that was circled in the red. I don't know if she was referring to that particular part as being, I think she was making mulch out of that. Is that?
Yeah, I had one of those ones with straw mulch next year.
Okay. And I'll let her explain that to you. She can do it better than I can. But also on October the 15th is when we received the request for a hearing. The history on this property actually is just, the case history is just the two cases from this year. The total liens and fines right now is $438. Nothing too crazy. As of today, this is what the property looks like. I do need to add that the public works crew did do the abatement on the 16th. They kind of got to it before we can tell them to hold off prior to after receiving the notice for hearing. But this was something that the abatement crew went on ahead and knocked down for us. Any questions?
Darnell, the timeline, you said that in June, there was a similar issue and July 1st issued an NOV. Did that one ever go to a citation?
No, that one was, like I said, it was abated by the time we did the second inspection.
And then my other question is, so the inspection was August, I think it said 28th. And
Yes,
you
sir.
issued an NOV at that time. Why did we issue an NOV again?
We did. It
Oh,
went
okay.
straight to a citation.
Oh, I thought the timeline said NOV. Okay. So inspection was August 28th, citation was October 9th.
Yes, sir.
Why the delay between the inspection and citation issue?
Yes, sir. So that was around my busy period where I have about maybe 200 neglected properties that I have to keep maintained. And this one, unfortunately, just kind of fell through the cracks. But once I got back on track, got the neglected properties caught back up and got those mowed for probably the third time this year, I was able to pick up my workload. And this one was one of those that when I was able to catch up to it, do a second inspection and no work was done, so we went on ahead and issued the citation.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The $438 in fine, is that because of the mowing that occurred on the 16th?
Possibly. So I want to say that would be, yes, because the grass, trash, and weed fine is only $300. So we don't issue anything that has cents in it. Yeah, so I would say the extra 138.66 would be because the city went on ahead and mowed it.
And just to make clear, just because they request a hearing, that does not stop, or does that stop the proceedings from that point?
Normally, it does. We try to tell Public Works to hold off until we get a decision from you guys, but they don't have to. It's in the citation that any violation can be abated immediately by the city. So they just ended up getting to this one a little quicker than normal, and before we can let them know that a hearing was requested.
Are there any other questions from board members? If not, thank you, Darnell. Ms. Scala Beltran, if you'd like to step forward, please.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Would you please just state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Mia Scala, and I live at 2616 Kenwood Drive, the house in question.
Floor is yours.
Okay. After receiving the first violation, I went out to take a look at it, and I realized that my lawn guy had not been trimming the right-of-way area up to the garden because my garden bed had become overgrown. Because I injured myself, I wasn't able to do my usual tomatoes and cucumbers, so I planted cover crops such as wheat straw and radishes, whatever I had seeds left over, because that keeps the soil healthy and from compacting if you're not going to garden. And I realized that it had gotten overgrown, so I trimmed it back. He also mentioned trees in the citation. We hired a tree guy because one of the trees kind of hooks over the street, so we hired a tree guy to trim back all the limbs. Got my lawn guy to come and mow the lawn by the right of way. I was unaware that I had to cut anything out of my actual raised garden beds. I just thought that when they got obtrusive, I had to fix them, which I did. So that's what the confusion was. He mentioned to me that in Kentucky, we weren't allowed to grow agricultural crops in gardens, but agriculture is just widespread commercial, large-scale farming. It's not like agricultural crops could be tomatoes, but that doesn't mean you can't grow tomatoes in your home garden. So I was just growing things that I was going to chop up for next year. It would keep the soil healthy, and then I could just put them there as mulch. I'm just asking because I did make a good faith effort immediately to rectify the problem and continue to keep, the rest of the property was never an issue. It was just this one little strip where my lawn guy was not caring for it and I was not being vigilant enough to make sure he was caring for it. So I accept responsibility for the first citation, but the other one, I don't understand why if I was gardening in a garden bed that was not growing over and destroy, it was at least 3 feet from this curb. It had plenty of room for the right of way. If I was not supposed to grow anything I would just like to understand what I was doing wrong so I don't do it again. And, I just it's an expensive fine. I can't really afford it. I was hoping because I did make some kind of effort to fix it, but it was a misunderstanding. I really thought that I could grow things in my garden bed without any kind of problem as long as it wasn't blocking other people or causing any other issues.
So, Ms. Scala, you ordinarily keep a garden, right?
Well, since we moved there, yeah, I put the garden beds up and for herbs and tomatoes, cucumbers, things like that.
And so you weren't going to be able to grow the food type crop that
Right,
you usually would.
I injured my shoulder last spring, so I wasn't able to do the usual kind of planting and
So you-
preparation.
So wheatgrass or something like a grass is what you.
There were herbs, there were radishes, there were wheatgrass. Basically, it was seeds that I had left over from other things to use as kind of cover crops because it keeps the soil from compacting, and you could use it as mulch.
In the pictures that he showed, at least on the left-hand side, there were some that were like 4 feet, like they were
Well,
really tall. These
the
weeds-
wheatgrass does grow kind of tall. I was trying to keep it more towards the inside of the property. When he found it, it had kind of been leaning over the front, and that's why my long guy wasn't trimming it. But within a week of that first citation, I rectified that situation, and I was keeping an eye on it so that nothing came out past the garden beds. I just didn't understand he wanted me to clear the garden beds too.
Yeah. So those really tall ones, that's the wheatgrass. I don't
Yeah.
know all the plants and stuff. So that was not a invasive thing, a weed that came in. That was something that you.
No, I
planted.
harvested the wheat seeds from straw that I had bought years prior, and you plant them and then you let them grow tall, and then they release their seeds, and then you take what's there, and then they grow again like every 6 weeks.
Okay.
And I was just trying to stock up on it for my mulch.
Is
I
there
mean,
any way
I'm sorry, I looked on the Kentucky invasive plant list to make sure I wasn't growing anything that was illegal to grow, and wheatgrass just wasn't on it.
is there any way, Darnell, you can pull that picture back up for us so we can see that?
Oh, sorry.
Right there.
Yeah, most of that is the wheatgrass. And as you can see, I was trying to keep, you could see that strip of gray, that's the bricks of the raised garden bed. And the first time I got a citation, it was all leaning much further over, which was my fault because I hadn't realized that my long guy wasn't going along with the trimmer to trim it. But now you can see it's all kind of contained. There's plenty of walking space with mowed lawn in front of it. you
So,
know,
so just to make clear, to the left, the tall with what appears to be seeds on top of it is what
That's-
you're, the wheatgrass.
that's wheatgrass.
Looking at the picture to the right of it, it looks like there's 3 separate beds there. What is that growing there?
There's a variety of things. There are weeds in there because I just put down a lot of cover crops such as radishes, basil, various herbs. I used whatever I had in my leftover seed pack in the spring just to kind of get stuff in there. And I didn't bother harvesting anything, including the weeds, because like I said, I was injured. I was just focusing on getting better. But again, because it was in the garden bed, I thought it was still, like I was allowed to grow stuff in the garden bed as long as I kept the front clear and didn't impede the way for anybody to walk by.
How long have you had these raised garden beds right there?
Since we moved into the house around 2021, we started building it, early 2021.
The question I have, and you may not know the answer to it, is where is the right-of-way line? Because that seems to be the point, I think. I can't think of a time that we've had a case like this, where we
There's
were
a-
talking about a garden.
There's a ditch for like water. I don't know if you could see it, but you see the shadow of it. So there's on this side, you see the pavement, that's the road. And then my garden starts about 3 to 4 feet back. And in between my garden and the right-of-way place, there is a ditch that people can't really walk in anyway because it gets kind of muddy and wet during the wet season.
But it's your testimony, this is not something that you're harvesting. You're just using this as a cover crop.
Some of it does get harvested, and then I chop it up and I turn it into mulch and compost so that I could spread it over the soil
Okay.
next year when I do garden.
But that tall stuff you call wheatgrass, it looks
Yes.
to me like to be Johnson grass. That's not harvestable for eating.
Not for
consumption.
eating, no, it's for mulch.
Okay. And then in the shorts,
stuff, you said it had weeds in it, but I don't see any, is there, like basil or radishes growing it that you could harvest? Did you harvest anything out of the short stuff?
Well, first of all, my herbs are more on the other side.
Okay.
And yeah, I did harvest them when they were there, but I wasn't, again, I was injured, so I was just trying to keep something growing to keep the garden alive for the year. And there were radishes in there, but it's not something I was doing for food because I didn't want to worry about fertilizing. I didn't want to worry about watering. I just wanted to keep something in there to keep the soil healthy and from compacting over the year.
But you did not have your yard guy go up into the bed and mow or weed eat those plants down?
No, we usually have them go around the garden beds, and I cut my garden bed plants because usually it's things that I harvest.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from board members?
If you look at the picture to the left, Mr. Chairman, the wheatgrass certainly is taller than what the city ordinance allows. And also, if you look behind that wheatgrass, it appears there's a vehicle there in that picture to the left. And certainly that taller wheatgrass could be a safety issue for someone coming around that curve and a car backing out of that driveway and causing an accident, or a child on a bicycle, or whatever the case might be. It's just kind of a safety issue all the way around.
That's a good point. Anything else from board members? Mrs. Scala, anything else you wanted to
Like I
add?
said, if I was unaware that I wasn't allowed to grow tall plants in a garden bed, I tried to make sure it was far enough from the road on the property, kept up around the property. I had one initial mistake where things did come out onto the right of way, and I rectified it because I thought my lawn guy had been doing it, but he apparently couldn't get to it, so I rectified it. I thought it was settled matter. No, I was completely mistaken that what was in my garden bed counted as something I'm not allowed to grow. I did make a good faith effort to rectify what I thought was the problem. So I'm asking that, either lower or eliminate the fine. I won't be growing wheatgrass next year anyway. I'm going to have to look into ordinance. I'd never had an issue. It's just, to me, it was just what was in my garden bed. And there are a lot of people who have along their property tall bushes, tall trees, bigger plants. It's not a full corner, it's a curve. That's our driveway actually right behind it and our garage. We've never had an issue coming in or out of the driveway. So if I made a mistake, I'll definitely rectify it and try to prevent it from the future. But I did try to take care of this like immediately. I just was under the misconception he was concerned about the right of way and the trees that were, the limbs were growing over the road and they were getting a little low. So we had those all trimmed and we fixed everything up. I'll, like I said, I'll look into the ordinances and I'll take better care of my garden in the future, but I really did not understand that it was what was in the garden bed that was the issue of concern.
Okay. Thank you. I know it's a little unusual to backtrack, but Darnell, would you mind stepping forward and just, I've got a couple of questions. Do you know where the right-of-way is on this road? How wide the right-of-way is?
I do not, but what I can say is that every road, and I think some of you guys know this already, every road has a different size right of way. If you don't know how to measure the right of way, what you'll do is you go to the center of the streets. And what I remember my time in CDS, you would have some streets that had a 20-foot right-of-way. Some had 10, some had 15. The way you measure your right-of-way is you go to the center of the street and you count 10, 15, sometimes 20 feet in one direction. And that's what your right-of-way would be considered. In this case, no, sir, I do not know what the actual right-of-way is in or on Kenwood, but if you go 15 feet from the center of that street, I'm more than positive that flower bed would be right in the line of 10 to 15 feet off of the center.
Okay. And then, so the grass, trash, and weeds generally, like I said, I can't think of a time that we've looked at a garden, right? So what's the dividing line then as far as, so somebody's got, say, a garden in their backyard, okay, and they're growing corn, that's going to be greater than 8 inches. Where's the line? Is it because we're hanging over the right of way? Is it a site triangle issue like Mr. Meacham brought up? I'm not sure where.
Yes, sir. So it was let me back up. When I originally cited this property, even the first time, none of that looked to me like anything garden wise. Okay. All of that looked like to me a regular old country boy, weeds. And that's what it was cited for. But let me read 2 of these ordinances that are inside the notice of violation. That's inside the citation that was sent to the property owner. In instructions, number 2 reads, any agricultural property not in actual agricultural use shall not have any grass or weeds which exceed a height of 24 inches. So that means basically, even if you do have some agricultural use on your property, that's not even, actually agricultural, it still cannot be taller than 24 inches.
Well, they can if they're farming it.
Right.
You can raise corn.
In actual agricultural
You
use.
can raise corn inside the city limits.
And then on number 3, section K, it says it shall be unlawful for the owner to permit any live tree or overgrowth vegetation to grow in a manner which interferes, to pose a threat to public safety or public rights of way in any manner. And I believe this property fits that description as well.
And what's your definition of weeds out of the ordinance?
There is no specific definition for weeds. But, oh shoot, I'm sorry. Let's see if I might have something in here for you. Yeah, I would say weeds would be maybe
Back up.
overgrowth vegetation.
Back up 1.
Yes, sir.
And number C, weeds, long grasses, stagnant. Okay, thank you. But others may be reading it too.
Go back to the picture one more time.
Yes, sir.
That's more than 20. The Johnson grass more than 3 foot. I can't tell. I can tell that Johnson grass.
Okay. She's claiming that.
Do you need any more? No, I don't have any more questions for Darnell. Thank you. Sure.
Okay, the use of the term agriculture is one of the reasons that it has been so confusing for me. Agriculture is commercial, large-scale farming. I don't farm commercially, mine falls under horticulture, which is a small private garden. And you understand how somebody like me, just a regular person, could read the language in the ordinances and struggle with them. But that is one of my biggest points of struggle, that the way it's worded and cited for agriculture, I didn't think that applied to me, because any plant you grow commercially, large scale, is agriculture, even if it's a teeny tiny plant. And any plant you grow in your own home garden is gardening or horticulture, regardless of what size it is. It's not the crop itself, it's the purpose of your crops,
Okay.
which is why there was confusion.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to close the hearing on this and allow the board to deliberate.
The way I look at it is a garden, you got corn, it's raised back here. You got flowers, zinnias grow 6 foot tall. They're being grown for purpose flowering. Corn's being grown for corn to harvest. Tomatoes, you may have your tomatoes on stakes. They may grow, mine do. And they get tall. But when I look at this picture right here, that looks like Johnson grass, and that's a weed. She calls it tall grass on that part. But then when I asked her that question, was she harvesting any part of it? She said, no, I was trying to save the soil, make the soil better. Well, that's not horticulture. That's not agriculture. That is, she could have done that and kept that mowed down and accomplished the same goal. I'm looking at that as a weed or weeds growing up into a bed. I like to hear other comments.
I guess, Doug, Doug, I guess need clarification from you on agriculture versus horticulture, because I'm trying to look it up as well.
Well, it's really going to be your job to interpret the ordinance that has been drafted that may not be complete. But what I would recommend is what Darnell has listed here is under 9303-1 on the citation. That refers to improved property. And improved property is defined as any property that is actively being utilized in a residential, commercial, industrial, or recreational form bordered on two sides by improved property or a public thoroughfare. So you would need to determine whether or not this is improved property and whether or not there was grass that exceeded 8 inches. There is no definition of grass or weeds in the ordinance. So that would have to be your interpretation.
But by the same token, if somebody was growing corn in their backyard or side yard, that's a garden crop. I don't see that being in violation. But somebody growing or even flowers, but this right here looks like weeds.
And I think too, at least in my eye, and I'm just one on this, but if you grew something like that in a garden, that's one thing, but this one being right up next to the road and where it coming around the curve, I mean, you can see, and Mr. Meacham, you pointed it out very clearly. I mean, there's a car hidden behind that over there on the left, and you could see where maybe you start to back out or round that curve, and it interferes with your sight. Right, and that's mentioned in the citation here, 9303 under 3, and it looks like paragraph L. it mentions that might pose a threat to public safety or public rights of way due to obstruction of view, obstruction of passage, falling, that sort of thing. But that could certainly be an obstruction of view. Again, just my thoughts.
Well, I did not hear any proof from Dornell saying it was obstruction on that. He said it might have been grown on the right of way, but there was no testimony, no measurements, no testimony on that. And I think they, in my opinion, they fell short on that, if that's their argument. If that's the city's only argument, they fell short on that one. But the fact that, to me, it looked like weeds. If I drove through that neighborhood and saw that bed right there, I'd be thinking that's weeds. That's not tomatoes or corn or zinnias or rose bushes or anything, or peppers or anything else. Anybody else?
Any thoughts from anyone else on the board?
I mean, I tend to agree. I think even if that was wheatgrass and she was harvesting that part of it, the rest of it down is well above the 8 inches of weeds. And she even admitted that that part, that's weeds.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the city has met the burden of proof and that this is in violation.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions about the motion? All right, we'll take a vote. All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so citation has been upheld and it's time to determine the fine, the penalty. The range is $200 to $400 for the fine plus a $200 administration fee. We'll entertain a motion.
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, I move that we set the minimum amount, which is by ordinance, is a $200 fine and a $200 administrative fee. And that's the minimum amount that by ordinance that we can set.
So moved.
We have a-
Seconded, sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion will carry. I'll sign it. Ms. Scholar, our clerk has a copy of the citation for you to sign. All right, we'll move forward to the next case on our agenda, public hearing, agenda item 6C, which is case number CEBPM 2408014, Walter Shamble, 167 South Vine Street for unsafe structures. Mark DeArmond is our code enforcement officer. Mr. Chairman, would you please state your full name, employer, and position for the record?
Mark DeArmond, Code Enforcement Officer for the Hopkinsville Fire Department.
All right. If you would, please make your presentation.
We've got a complaint on this structure. Actually, it starts back in March. So the early history, and you'll see the timeline and the trail that we got to this structure coming as an unsafe structure here in just a second. But in March, the complaint came in about the exterior conditions. And so an exterior basic property maintenance inspection was conducted then. And over time, it graduated to an unsafe structure, and the timeline will be shown here. I'll start with the photo on the right. The Google Street View taken in 2022 is from an angle because the tree in the front blocks the structure. So I added this photo that was taken recently to show the house in question without the trees, so we have an idea of what we're looking at.
Mr. Jarman, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I did not swear you in. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do.
I do.
And has everything you said already been under that same
Yes, sir.
swearing? Okay.
Yes, sir. PBA records show that 167 South Vine is owned by Mr. Walter Shamble. Mailing address is the same of 167 South Vine, but the house and the structure is vacant. So the first part of the series of these photos start with the unsafe structure, so August 30th. So again, there'll be some activity going prior to this.
Would you please describe what we're seeing on the roof there on that picture that was on the left?
Yes, sir.
Kind of look like a tarp and tobacco sticks. What are we looking at there?
Tarp that's been there, that's aged and weathered with nailing strips, holding it in place.
Thank you.
Following the inspection on September the 4th, a notice of violation, an NOV for an unsafe structure was attached and mailed after the unsafe structure checklist was completed. After any response on October the 9th, a re-inspection occurred. No changes been made, so the citation was issued and mailed, posted. Legal notice identifies 167 South Vine Street and the date of the hearing. The citation was mailed by certified mail, was not delivered, and was turned back to our office. So the timeline that I referred to on March 21st followed a complaint and inspection, and NOV was issued on the same date for exterior property violations. No response, and the follow-up date came up of April the 3rd. Conditions stayed the same, and a citation for exterior basic property maintenance was issued against this property. May 14th, the final order was signed regarding the violations of the exterior violations. Complaint came in later around early September. The inspection occurred, and at this point, it met the criteria for an unsafe structure on November the 4th. No response. A follow-up inspection occurred on September the 9th. Conditions remained the same. So we go all the way back to March the 21st to the date. There's been no communication or contact from the property owner to our office. Water was terminated 3 years ago. The electric service is still in service. The house is still hot. Gas was removed some 6 months ago. We follow Chapter 163.03 and using the Appendix 1 of Appendix A for the minimum standard for an unsafe structure. Here's an example of some foundation cracks. This asbestos siding is on the house all the way around and down fairly low, and the overgrowth around it blocks a lot of the foundations, but this one was pretty obvious. The exterior walls, again, with that asbestos type siding, it cracks and breaks, and there's in this one corner on the left, all of it's missing. It's going into the plastic around the interior walls. Then you can see on the other photo, lots of missing exterior siding pieces as it breaks and crumbles. The front porch, the left top photo that's circled shows a header that's sitting on top of the decorative columns is actually leaning in. If you look to the photo just below that one, you'll see where that header beam has pushed through and busted through the siding from the inside of the front porch. Photo on the right is the right side back of the house where the porch is got decay and rot on the roof structure of the porch itself. I've got several photos of the roof because it is somewhat difficult to see, but the one on the left, there is a hole that's circled. Again, that is weathered tarp. Best that we can tell from almost a 3-story home, it's a weathered tarp with one bias nailers holding the tarp in place. The second photo has a hole in the front of us, right there at the corner of the building at the top. What's circled in this photo looks to be the ridge pole of the structure. And if that's the case, then that roof that's connected to that ridge pole has dropped or sagged. Again, additional photos of the roof and its condition. That's a ridge pole in question, and the tarp has been pulled from that section of it through time, I suppose. There were some broken windows and broken glass in the door, but there was not access to the inside. All this inspection is an exterior inspection only. Multiple windows boarded up. You see on this photo to the right, the way the unit has of the air conditioner has been pushed out, fallen out, pushed out. More boarded and broken windows, and the photo on the right is broken glass in the storm door. There's a tire, it looked like a small engine, lawnmower of sorts around the house. The other two photos are difficult to make out, but they are an accessory structure, a small garage shed that was had a tree through it. Some of the walls are down, roof is gone. We did not get an internal inspection because of the doors and windows locked. So the condition of all the interiors of the walls, floors, ceilings, and stairs is unknown. The condition, how bad it is through the water, through the roof, but it's still unknown. Electric meter still in service per Hopkinsville Electric Company. Gas meter is still intact. Gas was shut off at the meter some 6 months ago. Plumbing appears inoperable. The water has been off 3 years. The fixtures, again, unknown because not making access. So the exterior building of the 10 options, 8 of the criteria apply to this structure. All 8 were in violations. Interior structure, again, an unknown. Item 17, the electric meter is still in place. Gas is off, water is off. So interior along with utilities is 2 out of 11 or 18%. The accessory structure, both the roof and the walls are in violation. The owner has allowed this structure to become a nuisance and a safety hazard. Conditions exist, particularly in the exterior structure, the front porch, and the items blown off the roof could be in safely considered a safety hazard for the neighbors in the area. Based on this inspection started in March and looking at it as of today, it has gotten worse. So it meets 10 out of 19 of the applicable standards for 53% as an unsafe structure. The historical activity starts back in 2016. There's also a CDS violation of abandoned urban properties issued in this year. The property standards are that you see in this year were items that were noticed around the home. You could not see the house through because of the overgrowth and the junk prior to that, and that was a separate case that was filed this year in Public Works, cleaned those items up. Previous taxes are some $3,200. Liens are some $2,700 with a total of $5,982 and change. And as of today, it's still the same.
You said it was boarded up, so you did not see any homeless or anybody else having access to the property at this time?
No, sir.
And no one has contacted you at all on this,
No, sir.
but yet somebody's paying the electric bill.
Yes, sir.
And how long has those citations been on the door?
Go back to the timeline. First notice of violation for exterior was placed in March 21st. The citation for the exterior was in April. The notice of violation for an unsafe structure was in September. Citation for the unsafe structure was in October.
Thank you.
So it was inspected and issued an NOV on basic property maintenance in the spring. In September, did you receive another complaint? In
Yes.
September, and that's kind of what spurred going back out there. What made you look at this through unsafe structure lens instead of basic property maintenance this time around?
Second inspection was, in essence, an initial inspection, and we found things. It's when the porch was found, the header on the front porch. There was a wrap around the chimney. It was blown off. Some of the tarp had opened up a couple of the holes. The prior checklist in March scored 47%. So it stayed at under 51. So it stayed as a basic property maintenance exterior violation. The roof was uncertain. The chimney was covered. So there's two. And then with the header on the porch was not picked up, honestly, on the first inspection.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from board members? All right. Thank you, Mr. Diarman. All right, the board floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the city has met the obligation and that this structure and the other building on the property be declared unsafe structure.
We have a motion on the floor. A motion and a proper second. Are there any questions about the motion? All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so the fine phase here, the range is $250 to $700 for the fine. Okay, I read 350, maybe my mouth didn't say, I do that sometimes. 350 to 700 would be the fine plus a $200 administration fee. And if, just as a reminder, if we're going to issue the city to handle the abatement, then we would also issue that as a lien, the cost of that as a lien against the property as well, as a reminder on that. So we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we issue the minimum fine, $350, $200 administrative fee, and that the city go ahead and with abatement on this property, and that be placed as a lien, the cost of abatement for it and all structures on the property be placed as a lien on the property.
We've got a motion.
Second.
Motion and a proper second. Are there any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda, item 7, unfinished business other than hearings. There is none. New business other than hearings, we've got a few different ones we've got to look at. Order to dismiss citation. Looks like we've got 4 of those. Who wants to? Darnell jumped up. Darnell's going to handle those for us. All right, Darnell, will you tell us about these?
I don't know for certain on all of them. Lynn can correct me on this if I'm wrong. But I believe all of these properties had been sold prior to the citation being issued. So the citation went to the wrong or previous property owners and not the correct property owner.
So we would dismiss this citation because it's in effect, it's citing the wrong person.
Correct.
Do you happen to know if all of them, have you done a follow-up inspection? Like, are they all still in violation, or do you kind of give the new property owner some time before you go?
So normally the new property owners will call us and let us know. The old property owners will call us and let us know, hey, I don't own that property anymore. X, Y, and Z. At that point, we'll notify Public Works, let them know, hey, hold off on abatement. If they haven't done it already, sometimes they have to just eat that charge. But once we bring it to you guys and dismiss it is when we go back out and check and see if those properties are in fact still in violation. And then we restart the process with the new property owner information.
Thank you. So the board will entertain a motion to dismiss all the 4 citations listed under agenda item 8A.
Make a motion to dismiss.
In motion and a second. Any questions about the motion? All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye. Any opposed? Those citations are dismissed. Item 8B, fines paid. What's needed there? Just a motion to uphold the violation and that the fines have already been paid. I'm not sure what do we need there. We just need a motion for 8B to uphold those violations.
We have to go through his procedure first.
Okay, treat that like a default final order. Okay. Then Darnell, would you please describe the procedure followed for each citation on the agenda for a default final order?
Yes, sir. So a lot of these cases are either a complaint or a proactive route fine. For all non-repeat offenders, if a violation is found, a notice of violation is sent, giving the property owner 10 days to either respond or fix the issue. After those 10 days are up, a second inspection is made. If the property is still in violation, which these were, a citation is issued and brought before you guys today.
And were the procedures mandated by Chapter 33 of the Hopkinsville Code of Ordinances followed for the cases presented tonight?
To the best of my knowledge.
Thank you. All right, so let's do that as two motions. For 8B would be to uphold the violations. They've already paid the fines.
Mr. Chairman, I move that for the citations listed on 8B that we uphold the citation as the fines have been paid.
So a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, and then we've got agenda item 8C through K are default final orders, and we can take those as one motion. They'll be to uphold the violation and issue the fines listed.
What's the administrative cost? 100? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move that we go ahead and issue the default final order for those cases listed on the agenda from 8C through 8K with the fines listed on the agenda plus a $100 administrative cost for each one.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Are there any questions? All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Are there any announcements from members, board members, or staff? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned.
Hit your gavel or what?